Welcome to the fourth episode of the Reality Transurfing Fundamentals series. In this comprehensive exploration, we'll delve into one of the most powerful and practical concepts in reality transurfing: pendulums. This concept, while seemingly abstract at first, will provide you with a revolutionary framework for understanding the hidden forces that influence your daily decisions, emotions, and life trajectory. By the end of this video, you'll have gained profound insights into what pendulums are, how they operate in both obvious and subtle ways throughout your life, why they can be destructive to your well-being and personal freedom, and most importantly, how to recognize and liberate yourself from their often invisible control. This knowledge represents one of the most practical and immediately applicable aspects of reality transurfing, offering tools you can implement today to reclaim your energy and autonomy. Whether you're new to reality transurfing or continuing your journey with us, understanding pendulums will forever change how you perceive social dynamics, group behaviors, and even your own reactions to the world around you. Let's begin this crucial exploration together. Number 1. What are pendulums? The energy information structures that surround us. In the reality transurfing model developed by Vadim Zeland, a pendulum represents an energy information structure created by the collective thought energy of groups of people. This concept may initially seem abstract, but it describes a phenomenon we all experience daily. Whenever individuals think and act in a similar manner, whether it's members of a political party, supporters of a sports team, adherents to a religion, participants in a social trend, or even family members following traditional patterns, their thought energy unites into a single current. Over time, this collective energy coalesces to form an independent entity: the pendulum. The birth and development of pendulums. Pendulums don't emerge instantaneously. They form gradually as more people align their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in a particular direction. Consider how social movements begin, first with a few passionate individuals, then growing as others join, until eventually the movement takes on a life of its own, sometimes evolving beyond the original founder's intentions. The crucial insight of reality transurfing is recognizing that these collective energy structures don't merely exist as concepts or organizations. They become actual energetic entities that can influence and manipulate individuals within their field. Examples in everyday life: pendulums exist all around us, manifesting in various forms and at different scales. Macro-scale pendulums: political systems, democracy, communism, major religions, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, economic models, capitalism, socialism, and national identities. Mid-scale pendulums: corporations and their cultures, professional associations, sports fan bases, social movements like environmentalism or civil rights activism, and educational institutions. Microscale pendulums: family dynamics and traditions, friend groups, neighborhood communities, local clubs, and even the unspoken rules of behavior in public spaces like coffee shops or gyms. Emerging digital pendulums: social media platforms, online communities, influencer followings, and digital activism movements represent new forms of pendulums uniquely suited to the information age. An important distinction in reality transurfing is understanding that pendulums exist beyond their physical manifestations. While a corporation might have buildings, employees, and products, its pendulum encompasses something more: the collective thought patterns, emotional investments, and energetic exchanges of everyone connected to it. This includes employees, customers, competitors, critics, and even those who simply know of its existence. The dual nature of pendulums. Pendulums aren't inherently negative or positive. They're energetic phenomena that exist as natural consequences of human collective thought. Some pendulums might align with your personal goals and values, offering support and resources. Others might directly oppose your well-being, draining your energy and diverting you from your true purpose. What makes pendulums potentially destructive is their fundamental nature. Once formed, they develop a kind of independent consciousness oriented toward self-preservation and growth. A pendulum's primary goal is to attract more adherents and energy, expanding its influence and ensuring its continued existence, regardless of whether this benefits the individuals supplying that energy. Number 2. How pendulums control individuals. Pendulums exert influence through sophisticated mechanisms that often operate below our conscious awareness. Understanding these mechanisms is essential for recognizing when you're being manipulated and learning how to maintain your autonomy. The energy exchange dynamic. The fundamental relationship between pendulums and individuals is based on energy exchange. Pendulums cannot generate energy on their own. They must extract it from people through various forms of engagement. Emotional investment. When you feel strong emotions related to a pendulum's domain, whether passion, anger, fear, devotion, or enthusiasm, you're feeding it energy. Mental focus and attention. Even your thoughts and attention constitute energy that pendulums can harvest. This explains why media outlets and platforms compete so fiercely for your attention. It represents energy they can capture. Time and effort. Your physical participation, whether attending events, performing rituals, completing tasks, or spreading a pendulum's message, provides substantial energy. Financial contributions. Money represents condensed human energy, making financial support a particularly potent form of feeding pendulums. The infrastructure of control pendulums establish elaborate systems to ensure a continuous flow of energy from individuals. Setting rules and norms. All pendulums create explicit or implicit rules that adherents must follow. These range from formal laws and regulations to unspoken social expectations. The banking system pendulum, for instance, has established complex rules about credit scores, lending practices, and financial behaviors that individuals must navigate. Even informal social groups develop norms about appropriate conversation topics, acceptable behaviors, or required beliefs. These rules serve multiple purposes. They create a sense of group identity and belonging. They establish hierarchies within the pendulum. They provide mechanisms to identify and exclude outsiders. They create standardized ways of channeling energy to the pendulum. Information control mechanisms. Pendulums carefully manage information flow to maintain their power. Narratives and meaning-making. Pendulums offer interpretive frameworks that explain how the world works, your place in it, and what matters. Political pendulums, for example, provide distinct narratives about societal problems and solutions. Specialized language. Many pendulums develop terminology, jargon, or communication styles that simultaneously bond insiders and exclude outsiders. This ranges from corporate buzzwords to religious terminology to academic language. Selective information presentation. Pendulums highlight information that reinforces their worldview while downplaying or discrediting contradictory data. This filtering process happens in news media, religious teachings, corporate communications, and even family stories about how things have always been done. Emotional manipulation. Perhaps most powerful is how pendulums manage the emotional states of individuals. Fear induction. Creating anxiety about potential threats, failures, or exclusion serves as a powerful motivator for compliance. Pride and superiority. Many pendulums offer followers a sense of being special, chosen, more enlightened, or better than others. Guilt and shame. When members fail to meet expectations or consider leaving, pendulums can trigger intense negative emotions to bring them back into alignment. Belonging and acceptance. Pendulums provide the deeply human need for community and acceptance, making separation psychologically painful. Purpose and meaning. By connecting everyday actions to larger narratives, pendulums give adherents a sense that their contributions matter. The unconscious pull of strings. One of Zeland's most powerful insights is his metaphor of strings that pendulums use to manipulate individuals. These strings connect to our psychological vulnerabilities, personality traits, and unconscious patterns. When a pendulum pulls these strings, we react automatically, often without realizing we're being manipulated. Common strings include desire for approval and fear of rejection, need to be right or fear of being wrong, desire to be special or fear of being ordinary, ambition and competitive drives, insecurities about status, appearance, or capability, traumatic experiences from our past, cultural conditioning from childhood. What makes these strings so effective is their invisibility. We often believe we're acting freely when we're actually responding to skilled manipulation of our psychological triggers. Number 3. The destructive nature of pendulums. Why they undermine individual well-being. While pendulums aren't inherently evil, they possess qualities that make them potentially destructive to human happiness and fulfillment. Understanding these destructive tendencies helps us avoid their negative impact on our lives. The indifference to individual well-being. Perhaps the most fundamental issue with pendulums is that they are not concerned with the well-being of any individual person. A pendulum's sole purpose is to gain and maintain energy. Whether its adherents are happy, fulfilled, healthy, or living authentic lives is irrelevant to the pendulum's functioning. Consider how corporate pendulums often sacrifice employee well-being for profit, how political pendulums use supporters as expendable instruments for gaining power, or how social media pendulums design addictive features that harm users' mental health to maximize engagement. The individual is always secondary to the pendulum's continuation and growth. The creation of artificial conflicts. Pendulums thrive on opposition and conflict. When people are emotionally charged, angry, fearful, righteous, or defensive, they generate and release tremendous energy that pendulums can harvest. This creates a perverse incentive for pendulums to stimulate conflict rather than harmony. This manifests in numerous ways: tribalism and us versus them dynamics. Pendulums constantly reinforce the notion that we are good, they are bad, creating artificial divisions between humans who might otherwise cooperate. Manufactured outrage. Many pendulums, especially in media and politics, deliberately provoke anger and indignation to energize their followers. Competition over cooperation. Even when cooperation would better serve individuals, pendulums often structure situations as zero-sum competitions. Perpetual problems without solutions. Some pendulums actually benefit from maintaining problems rather than solving them, as the ongoing struggle generates more energy than resolution would. Diversion from authentic life paths. According to Reality Transurfing, each person has potential life paths, or lifelines, where their authentic talents, purposes, and happiness exist. Pendulums often divert individuals from these authentic paths by imposing external goals, values, and metrics of success. Examples include the education, career pendulum that channels people into prestigious but personally unfulfilling professions. The consumerism pendulum that convinces people happiness lies in acquisition rather than meaningful experience. Family pendulums that pressure members to maintain traditions even when they cause suffering. Religious pendulums that may impose guilt about natural human desires or needs. This diversion is particularly destructive because it doesn't just consume energy temporarily. It can lead individuals to spend entire lifetimes pursuing goals that never bring the fulfillment they seek. The disguise of noble intentions. What makes pendulums particularly challenging to identify is that many disguise their energy-harvesting nature behind genuinely noble causes or positive values. Charities, environmental movements, spiritual groups, and educational institutions can all form pendulums while appearing to serve worthy goals. The key distinction is how these organizations relate to individuals. Does participation leave you energized or drained? Does the organization value critical thinking or demand unquestioning loyalty? Are you appreciated as a unique individual or valued only for your contributions? Do you feel free to engage or withdraw based on your authentic needs? Is guilt or fear used to ensure compliance? Even the most seemingly benevolent pendulum becomes destructive when it prioritizes its own continuation over the well-being of those it claims to serve. Number 4. How pendulums manipulate and hook you. The psychology of control. Pendulums have evolved sophisticated psychological mechanisms to capture and retain human energy. Understanding these tactics is essential for maintaining your autonomy and conscious choice. Fear. The primary hook. Fear represents the most powerful and prevalent tool pendulums use to control individuals. Fear operates at primal levels of our brain, triggering fight or flight responses that bypass rational thought and generate immense energy. Pendulums employ various fear-based strategies. Existential threats. Many religious and political pendulums emphasize apocalyptic scenarios, damnation, or civilization collapse. Social rejection. Professional, community, and family pendulums often leverage fear of exclusion or abandonment. Scarcity and insecurity. Economic pendulums maintain power through fears about financial security, job stability, or resource availability. Health anxieties. Medical and wellness pendulums may amplify fears about disease, aging, or death. Status and relevance. Social media and fashion pendulums exploit fears of becoming irrelevant, outdated, or socially invisible. The news media pendulum represents perhaps the most explicit example of fear-driven energy harvesting. By maintaining a constant stream of threats, crises, and dangers, many exaggerated or presented without context, news outlets keep viewers in states of anxiety and hypervigilance that translate to attention, engagement, and advertising revenue. Guilt and obligation. Second only to fear, guilt and obligation serve as powerful mechanisms for pendulum control. These emotional states are particularly effective because they're deeply programmed from childhood through parenting and education. They operate largely below conscious awareness. They're reinforced by social approval, disapproval mechanisms. They create internal pressure that feels like our own voice rather than external manipulation. Pendulums deliberately cultivate guilt and obligation through several approaches. Debts that can never be fully repaid. Whether to parents who sacrificed everything for you, a country that gave you freedom, or a deity who created you, many pendulums establish unpayable debts that require perpetual energy contribution. Moral absolutes and impossible standards. By establishing ideals that no human can consistently meet, pendulums ensure followers always feel falling short and needing to compensate. Responsibility for others' feelings. Many pendulums train adherents to feel responsible for others' emotional states, creating a powerful form of control. Past investments fallacy. After you've invested significant time, money, or identity in a pendulum, it can leverage your reluctance to waste that investment by leaving. Conflict and opposition. The pendulums thrive on conflict because opposition generates tremendous energy from both sides. When you hate or fight against a pendulum, you're often feeding it as much energy as its supporters provide. This manifests in several patterns. Polarization. Many pendulums deliberately push toward extreme positions to maximize emotional engagement. Demonization of critics. By portraying critics as evil, stupid, or threatening, a pendulum ensures emotional rather than rational responses. Righteousness and victimhood. Feeling morally superior or unjustly persecuted generates intense emotional energy that pendulums can harvest. Perpetual struggle narratives. Many pendulums frame their existence as a never-ending battle against powerful opponents, ensuring continued energy investment. A key insight of reality transurfing is recognizing that opposing forces in apparent conflict, like rival political parties, competing religions, or even warring nations, are often serving the same higher-order pendulum of conflict itself. The energy harvested from both sides ultimately feeds the larger pendulum structure. Habits and psychological complexes. Beyond these universal mechanisms, pendulums exploit individual psychological complexes, patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior unique to each person's history and personality. Common complexes that pendulums leverage include inferiority, feeling inadequate or less worthy than others; superiority, needing to prove one's exceptional quality or importance; perfectionism, inability to accept flaws or mistakes in oneself or others; savior-rescuer, compulsion to fix others or solve their problems; victim, pattern of feeling persecuted, misunderstood, or targeted; approval-seeking, excessive need for validation and acceptance. Each complex represents a hook that specific pendulums can use to capture your energy. Understanding your personal psychological patterns is therefore crucial in freeing yourself from pendulum manipulation. 5. Real-life examples of pendulums. To fully grasp the concept of pendulums, it helps to analyze how they operate in familiar contexts. Let's examine several examples in detail to illuminate their mechanisms and effects. Sports fanaticism. Sports teams and leagues represent perhaps the most visible and accessible examples of pendulums in action. Clear tribal identities. Teams have distinct colors, logos, anthem territories that create instant in-group, out-group distinctions. Emotional investment. The emotional roller coaster experienced by fans, from ecstatic victory to crushing defeat, represents pure energy transfer to the pendulum. Ritualistic behaviors. From pre-game traditions to specific chants and movements during games, these rituals channel and amplify energy. Financial extraction. Through ticket sales, merchandise, broadcast rights, and gambling, the pendulum captures financial energy. Identity fusion. Many fans incorporate team affiliation into their core identity, making separation psychologically threatening. Generational transmission. Team loyalties are often passed from parents to children, ensuring the pendulum's continuation. What makes sports pendulums particularly instructive is their transparency. Most fans recognize their participation is voluntary and primarily for entertainment, yet the emotional and energetic investment can still be enormous. This illustrates how even when we're aware of a pendulum's nature, its pull can remain powerful. Workplace culture. Corporate and organizational pendulums affect millions of people daily, often in subtle ways. Value statements and mission. These provide the ideological framework that justifies energy investment. Status hierarchies. Formal and informal power structures create aspirational ladders that keep employees constantly striving. Performance metrics. These establish standardized measurements that redirect focus from authentic value toward pendulum-serving activities. Cultural norms. Unwritten rules about working hours, communication styles, and acceptable behaviors enforce conformity. Reward and punishment systems. From promotions to public recognition to termination, these mechanisms ensure alignment with pendulum priorities. What makes workplace pendulums particularly powerful is their control over material resources necessary for survival. When your ability to provide food and shelter depends on pleasing a pendulum, the pressure to conform intensifies dramatically. Social media. Social media platforms represent a new and uniquely powerful form of pendulum that has evolved within the digital age. Attention extraction. These systems are meticulously engineered to capture and maintain human attention, the fundamental energy currency. Emotion amplification. Algorithms deliberately promote content that triggers strong emotional responses, maximizing energy generation. Validation mechanics. Through likes, shares, and comments, these pendulums create addictive feedback loops of social approval. Personalized manipulation. By tracking behaviors and preferences, these pendulums can deliver precisely targeted hooks tailored to individual vulnerabilities. Polarization engines. Content that divides and inflames generates more engagement than content that unifies or calms, creating systematic bias toward conflict. Social media pendulums demonstrate how technological innovation can create more efficient energy harvesting systems. Their ability to deliver personalized, intermittent rewards while tracking detailed metrics on user response represents an unprecedented evolution in pendulum effectiveness. Family systems. Family pendulums deserve special attention because they shape our early understanding of reality and establish patterns that other pendulums later exploit. Intergenerational scripts. Many families perpetuate specific patterns of behavior, relationship dynamics, and expectations across generations. Role assignments. Family pendulums often assign fixed roles to members, the responsible one, the troublemaker, the peacemaker, that limit authentic development. Conditional approval. The withdrawal and offering of love and acceptance trains children to prioritize pendulum service over authentic needs. Loyalty demands. Many family pendulums instill the belief that questioning or departing from family patterns represents betrayal. Inherited wounds. Unhealed trauma often passes through family pendulums, with each generation unconsciously recreating painful patterns. The family pendulum's power stems from its formation during our most vulnerable developmental periods. Patterns established when we were completely dependent on family for survival become deeply embedded in our nervous system and self-concept, creating strings that other pendulums can later pull. 6. The battle of the pendulums, understanding societal conflict. When we view society through the lens of pendulum dynamics, we gain a powerful framework for understanding conflicts at all scales, from personal disagreements to international wars. Essentially, most social conflicts represent competitions between pendulums for energy and adherence. The zero-sum game perception. Pendulums perceive the world as a zero-sum competition for limited human energy. From this perspective, if people are investing energy in a rival pendulum, that energy is unavailable for harvest. This creates a fundamental incentive for pendulums to attract adherents away from rival pendulums, weaken or destroy competing pendulums, prevent the formation of new pendulums that might divert energy, absorb or assimilate smaller pendulums when advantageous. This competitive dynamic explains why pendulums frequently become more aggressive when they perceive threats to their dominance. For instance, established religious pendulums often react harshly to emerging spiritual movements. Dominant companies try to crush innovative startups, and political systems violently suppress alternative ideologies. Macro-scale pendulum conflicts. At the largest scale, pendulum conflicts manifest as geopolitical tensions and wars. Nations and alliances represent massive pendulums competing for territory, resources, and ideological dominance. Cultural wars. Conflicts between secular and religious worldviews or between different cultural value systems represent pendulum battles for defining social reality. Economic system rivalries. Capitalism, socialism, and other economic models compete as pendulums offering different organizational frameworks. Technological disruptions. Established industry pendulums frequently resist technological innovations that threaten their energy supply. What's particularly revealing about pendulum theory is how it explains the persistence of seemingly irrational conflicts. From an individual human perspective, cooperation and harmony would often better serve everyone's interests. But from a pendulum perspective, conflict itself generates maximum energy, creating an incentive structure that perpetuates division and struggle. The escalation spiral pendulum conflicts typically follow escalation patterns. 1. Initial differentiation. Pendulums establish distinct identities and boundaries. 2. Competition for adherence. Pendulums begin actively recruiting from the same population. 3. Delegitimization. Each pendulum attempts to undermine the credibility and value of rivals. 4. Demonization. Rivals are portrayed not just as incorrect but as dangerous or evil. 5. Polarization. Moderate positions become untenable as pendulums push toward extremes. 6. Dehumanization. Opponents become seen as fundamentally different or less than human. 7. Justification of harm. Violence or destruction becomes morally acceptable against the demonized outgroup. This pattern explains how initially minor differences between groups can escalate into seemingly intractable conflicts where reconciliation appears impossible. The pendulums have carried the situation far beyond what individual human interests would dictate. Parasitic and symbiotic relationships. Not all pendulum interactions are directly competitive. Complex relationships develop between pendulums in various forms. Predator-prey dynamics. Some pendulums actually depend on opposition from other pendulums to energize their adherents. Political pendulums, for instance, often need enemies to maintain follower engagement. Symbiotic arrangements. Certain pendulums develop mutually beneficial relationships. The fashion industry and media pendulums, for example, support each other's energy needs. Hierarchical structures. Smaller pendulums often function within larger ones. A department pendulum exists within a company pendulum, which exists within an industry pendulum. Pendulum fusion. When conditions change, previously separate pendulums may merge to create more powerful energy harvesting structures. Understanding these complex interpendulum dynamics helps explain why some societal problems prove remarkably resistant to solution. The pendulums involved may actually benefit from the problem's continuation rather than its resolution. 7. How to recognize when you're caught by a pendulum. Signs of entrapment. Developing the ability to recognize when you're being influenced by a pendulum represents a crucial step toward freedom. Here are detailed indicators that you're caught in a pendulum sway. Emotional red flags. Your emotional state offers clear signals about pendulum influence. Disproportionate emotional reactions. When your emotional response seems stronger than the situation warrants, the pendulum may be amplifying your reaction. Righteousness and moral certainty. Feeling absolutely certain of your moral position often indicates pendulum influence rather than nuanced personal ethics. Compulsive defense or advocacy. Feeling unable to let criticism of your group or position go unanswered suggests pendulum hooks. Energy depletion after engagement. Feeling exhausted, drained, or empty after participating in group activities or discussions is a classic sign of energy extraction. Anxiety about compliance. Persistent worry about whether you're meeting expectations or following rules properly indicates pendulum control. Relief through conformity. Experiencing relief when you align with group expectations rather than authentic satisfaction indicates pendulum pressure. Thought pattern indicators. Your thought processes also reveal pendulum influence. Binary thinking, seeing issues in black and white terms with no room for nuance or middle ground, typically reflects pendulum polarization. Automatic dismissal of contradictory information. When you find yourself immediately rejecting facts that challenge your group's narrative, you're likely in a pendulum's grip. Use of group terminology and framing. Adopting specialized language, metaphors, or frameworks from a group indicates mental alignment with its pendulum. Difficulty imagining alternative perspectives. Struggling to genuinely understand how someone could hold an opposing view suggests pendulum constraints on your thinking. Recitation rather than reflection. Catching yourself repeating standard arguments or explanations without genuine thought indicates pendulum programming. Behavioral signs. Your actions provide tangible evidence of pendulum control. Consistency bias. Feeling compelled to maintain consistency with past statements or positions, even when new information suggests reconsideration. Identity protective behaviors. Making choices to protect your identity within a group rather than based on actual outcomes. Social contagion. Adopting behaviors, preferences, or opinions simply because others in your group display them. Outsized investment. Dedicating disproportionate time, money, or attention to group-related activities compared to their actual benefit in your life. Evangelism compulsion. Feeling obligated to convert others to your viewpoint rather than simply living according to your values. Conflict generation. Repeatedly finding yourself in similar conflicts or arguments related to your group identities. Self-reflection questions. To deepen your awareness of pendulum influence, regularly ask yourself, 1. Would I hold this position if I had been born in a different family, country, era? 2. Am I enjoying this activity belief, or is it draining me? 3. Whose voice am I actually hearing when I think about this issue, mine or an internalized authority? 4. What would happen if I changed my mind or chose differently? 5. Would I want someone I love to be treated according to the principles I'm defending? 6. Am I acting from love and authenticity or from fear and obligation? Developing the habit of asking these questions creates space between you and pendulum influence, allowing for more conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. 8. Freeing yourself from pendulums. Practical strategies for liberation. Understanding pendulums is valuable, but the true power comes from practical techniques to free yourself from their control. Here are comprehensive strategies for reclaiming your autonomy. A. Don't fight the pendulum. The most counterintuitive yet important principle in dealing with pendulums is the futility of direct opposition. Fighting against a pendulum actually strengthens it by providing emotional energy through your opposition, creating the conflict dynamic that pendulums thrive on, deepening your emotional involvement, positioning you as the enemy, which reinforces the pendulum's narrative. Practical implementation. Accept the pendulum's existence. Acknowledge that pendulums are natural social phenomena without needing to judge them as evil. Practice non-judgment. When you notice a pendulum operating, observe it neutrally rather than condemning it. Adopt the water around the rock approach. Like water flowing around a boulder, move around obstacles without direct confrontation. Use the gray spectator technique. Mentally position yourself as an objective observer of the situation rather than a participant. Example. If you find yourself regularly angered by a political commentator's statements, instead of arguing or getting emotionally involved, simply acknowledge, this is designed to provoke an emotional response to feed a pendulum and redirect your attention elsewhere. B. Ignore and withdraw attention, the power of conscious disengagement. Since attention and emotional energy are what pendulums harvest, consciously controlling where you direct these resources represents your most powerful tool. Attention management techniques. Selective media consumption. Carefully choose what news, social media, and entertainment you expose yourself to based on how it affects your energy. Information fasting. Practice regular periods of disconnection from news, social media, and group communications to reset your attention patterns. Focus redirection. When you notice pendulum hooks activating, deliberately shift your attention to something neutral or positive. Engagement scheduling. Designate specific, limited times for engaging with potentially draining pendulums rather than allowing constant access. Emotional withdrawal strategies. Emotional detachment practice. When discussing charged topics, practice maintaining emotional neutrality while still communicating clearly. The playing along approach. In situations where you must participate, go through the motions without emotional investment, like an actor playing a role. Energy protection visualization. Before entering pendulum-heavy environments, visualize a protective field around yourself that allows you to interact without energy drain. Post-exposure cleansing. After unavoidable pendulum exposure, use activities like exercise, nature time, or meditation to release absorbed tensions. Example: when your workplace pendulum demands participation in energy-draining activities like office politics, you can physically participate while maintaining internal detachment. Rather than getting emotionally invested in the drama, view it as an anthropologist might observe an interesting cultural phenomenon. C. Shift your focus. Rather than merely avoiding pendulums, actively cultivating positive focus creates a proactive approach to energy management. Vision-based redirection. Intention setting. Start each day by consciously establishing what you want to create or experience, creating a positive attractor for your energy. Lifeline visualization. Regularly imagine yourself on your optimal life path, experiencing the feelings and outcomes that represent authentic success for you. Value clarification practice. Periodically review and refine your personal values to strengthen your internal compass. Practical focus shifts. Creation over consumption. Shift from consuming pendulum content, news, social media, entertainment, to creating your own projects and expressions. Service orientation. Focus on how you can genuinely help others rather than how you can win arguments or prove points. Appreciation practice. Deliberately direct attention to what you value and appreciate rather than what you oppose or fear. Immediacy focus. Bring attention to the direct sensory experience of the present moment rather than abstract concepts or distant concerns. Example: instead of spending hours reading news about environmental problems and feeling angry about what others are doing wrong, you might dedicate that time to creating a garden, volunteering for local conservation efforts, or developing practical skills for sustainable living. Cultivate awareness. The power of pendulums diminishes in proportion to your awareness of them. Developing vigilant consciousness creates the foundation for all other liberation strategies. Awareness practices. Reality check pauses. Periodically throughout the day, pause to ask, am I making this choice consciously, or am I being pulled by a pendulum? Body awareness scans. Learn to recognize the physical sensations that accompany pendulum hooks. Tension, heat, constriction, as early warning signs. Trigger identification. Catalog the specific topics, phrases, or situations that tend to pull you into pendulum reactions. Pattern recognition meditation. Regularly review your interactions to identify recurring patterns of pendulum influence. Consciousness expanding approaches. Perspective exercises. Practice temporarily adopting viewpoints opposite to your own to loosen pendulum thought constraints. Authentic truth speaking. Commit to expressing your genuine thoughts rather than what's expected or acceptable within your groups. Assumption questioning. Regularly examine the unspoken assumptions behind your positions and preferences. Identity expansion. Consciously expand your self-concept beyond group identities to include more universal human qualities. Example: when you feel a strong emotional reaction arising during a conversation about a charged topic, you might pause and ask, is this real concern coming from my authentic values, or am I being triggered by a pendulum? What physical sensations am I experiencing right now? What would happen if I didn't react? Number 9. When you can't ignore a pendulum. Sometimes complete disengagement from certain pendulums isn't feasible, particularly with family relationships, professional requirements, or systems necessary for basic functioning in society. Here are sophisticated strategies for these situations. Mindful compliance, the art of being in but not of. When you must participate in a pendulum's structures, you can still maintain inner autonomy. Role consciousness. Clearly distinguish between the role you're playing within the pendulum and your authentic self. Think, I am performing the role of an employee, family member, citizen, rather than fully identifying with that position. Boundary setting. Establish clear internal and, where possible, external boundaries about what aspects of the pendulum you will and won't engage with. Value alignment focus. Identify aspects of the pendulum that genuinely align with your values and focus your energy on those elements. Energy conservation techniques. Learn to perform required functions with minimal energy expenditure, preserving your vitality for what truly matters to you. Example: if your job requires participation in a corporate culture you find draining, you might consciously decide to fully engage only in aspects that align with your values, perhaps helping colleagues or delivering quality work, while minimizing investment in office politics or status competitions. Pattern interruption. Breaking the pendulum spell. When caught in recurring pendulum dynamics, particularly in close relationships or established social groups, pattern interruption techniques can create freedom. Script deviation. Identify recurring scripts in difficult interactions, then deliberately respond differently than expected, breaking the automatic pattern. Perspective shift questions. Introduce unexpected questions that shift the frame of reference, such as, what might we agree on? Or, how would we approach this if we were collaborating rather than opposing each other? Humor and playfulness. Introduce levity into tense situations to disrupt emotional escalation and create cognitive flexibility. Context changes, sometimes physically changing the environment, can interrupt established patterns, having a difficult conversation while walking instead of sitting across a table, for instance. Example: if family gatherings typically devolve into the same political arguments with predictable positions, you might interrupt the pattern by responding to a provocative statement with genuine curiosity rather than counter-arguments. That's interesting. What experiences shaped that view for you? Psychological techniques for maintaining center. Various psychological approaches can help maintain your center when pendulum pressures are unavoidable. Mental reframing. Transform how you perceive challenging pendulum interactions, viewing them as growth opportunities, anthropological field research, or even spiritual practice. Personification and externalization. Visualize the pendulum as a distinct entity separate from the individuals involved, helping maintain compassion for people while recognizing the pendulum's influence. Humor visualization. As Zeland suggests, mentally transforming a serious pendulum situation into something absurd, imagining argumentative people as squawking penguins, for instance, can break emotional reactivity. Grounding techniques. Use physical sensations, feeling your feet on the ground, focusing on breath, to maintain present moment awareness when pendulum dynamics attempt to pull you into emotional reactivity. Aftercare planning. Develop specific routines to restore your energy after necessary pendulum engagement, whether meditation, nature time, creative expression, or connection with support of others. Example: when attending a family event where you anticipate pendulum pressures, you might prepare by setting a clear intention, identifying potential triggers in advance, planning specific grounding techniques to use in difficult moments, and scheduling restorative time afterward. 10. Using pendulums to your advantage. Strategic engagement. While many pendulum interactions are draining, strategic engagement with certain pendulums can actually support your authentic goals and growth. The key is conscious choice rather than unconscious reaction. Identifying beneficial pendulums. Not all pendulums are detrimental to your well-being. Beneficial pendulums typically have these characteristics. Alignment with authentic values. They promote principles and actions that genuinely matter to you. Energy enhancement. Engagement leaves you feeling energized rather than depleted. Growth orientation. They challenge you to expand your capabilities and awareness. Healthy boundaries. They respect individual autonomy and differences. Transparent functioning. Their mechanisms and expectations are clear rather than manipulative. Examples might include certain educational communities, genuine spiritual traditions, creative collaborations, or social impact initiatives aligned with your deepest values. Strategic participation approaches. When you identify a potentially beneficial pendulum, consider these approaches. Conscious term setting. Explicitly define the terms of your engagement, including boundaries, expectations, and exit conditions. Periodic reassessment. Regularly evaluate whether the pendulum continues to serve your authentic development, adjusting engagement accordingly. Partial participation. Engage with specific aspects of the pendulum that serve you while declining others that don't. Value extraction focus. Approach the pendulum with clarity about what you seek to gain, taking responsibility for your learning and growth, rather than becoming dependent. Contribution without identification. Offer your gifts and energy to causes you value without deriving your identity from them. Example: you might join a spiritual community that teaches practices you find valuable while maintaining healthy skepticism, setting clear boundaries about financial or time commitments, periodically reassessing its impact on your life, and avoiding identification with its hierarchy or status structures. Leveraging pendulum energy for personal goals. In some situations, you can actually use pendulum dynamics strategically. Alignment with existing currents. When your authentic goals happen to align with a pendulum's direction, you can surf its wave to make faster progress. Resource access. Pendulums often control resources, knowledge, connections, platforms that can be accessed through strategic participation. Amplification opportunities. Pendulums can sometimes help amplify your authentic message, or work if there's sufficient alignment. Transformation from within. Strategic positioning within pendulums can sometimes create opportunities to guide them toward more positive functioning. Example: if you're passionate about environmental sustainability and find a corporate pendulum beginning to move in that direction, even if for marketing reasons, you might strategically position yourself within that movement to access resources and influence that advance your authentic goals. Throughout this exploration, we've covered the fundamental nature of pendulums, their mechanisms of control, their destructive tendencies, and strategies for liberating yourself from their influence. Let's consolidate these insights into an actionable framework. Key understanding points. Pendulums are collective energy structures formed by group thought and emotion. They exist to gather and maintain energy, not to support individual well-being. They influence through emotional hooks, rules, expectations, and psychological manipulation. They are destructive when they divert you from your authentic path and drain your energy. Most social conflicts represent pendulum battles for energy and adherence. Awareness is the fundamental tool for freedom from pendulum control. Daily practice for pendulum freedom. To implement these insights in your daily life, consider this practical approach. 1. Morning awareness setting. Begin each day by consciously establishing your authentic intentions and priorities, creating a strong center before engaging with pendulum influences. 2. Pendulum identification practice. Throughout your day, practice identifying the pendulums operating in different environments and interactions. Simply naming them. This is the workplace pendulum, or I see the social media pendulum activating, creates crucial distance. 3. Trigger recognition development. Pay attention to your emotional reactions, identifying specific triggers that pendulums use to hook your energy. Create a mental or physical list of your personal strings that pendulums pull. 4. Strategic response choices. When you notice pendulum influence, consciously choose your response. Complete disengagement. Changing the subject, walking away, not responding. Minimal surface engagement without emotional investment. Pattern interruption through unexpected responses. Genuine engagement with clear boundaries for beneficial pendulums. 5. Energy restoration practices. Develop specific routines to restore your energy after pendulum exposure, whether meditation, creative expression, nature connection, or meaningful relationships. 6. Evening reflection. Periodically review your day's interactions, identifying where you maintained your center and where pendulums successfully captured your energy. View these not as failures, but as valuable feedback for increasing awareness. The ultimate goal: balanced autonomy. The objective isn't to isolate yourself from all pendulums. That would be neither possible nor desirable in our interconnected world. Rather, the goal is conscious choice, engaging with pendulums that genuinely serve your growth and authentic purpose. Maintaining your center when interaction with destructive pendulums is necessary. Conserving your energy for creation rather than conflict. Living from internal guidance rather than external pressure. This balanced autonomy represents true freedom, not freedom from all influence, but freedom to choose which influences you allow into your life and how you engage with them. Reclaiming your sovereign energy. In this video, we've examined the invisible forces that shape our thoughts, emotions, and life choices. By understanding pendulums, how they form, how they influence us, and how to free ourselves from their control, you've gained a powerful tool for reclaiming your sovereign energy and authentic path. Remember that awareness itself is the most powerful tool. The more conscious you become of pendulum dynamics, the less control they have over you. This awareness doesn't develop overnight. It's a skill refined through consistent practice and self-observation. In the next video, we'll explore how to apply the understanding of pendulums to the process of manifestation. You'll learn how to navigate the space of variations to create the reality you truly desire, free from the limiting scripts and expectations of external energy structures. Remember, you always have the right to choose your own destiny. Pendulums only have power when you give them your energy. By reclaiming your awareness and intention, you step back into the role of creator in your own reality. This is not merely a philosophical position, it's a practical approach to living with greater freedom, authenticity, and joy. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. Until next time, stay aware and maintain your center in the dance of pendulums that surrounds us all.